Hi folks, hi everyone coming in. How you doing? Hi everyone, how you doing?
Hi Simon.
Hey, you right?
Good.
Hey Ray, how are you? Haven't seen you in a long time.
Oh no, less hair now.
Yeah. I'm a bit grayer as well since we would have last seen each other. Just letting some people come in into the call. So brilliant. It's great to see you all jumping on. Hey Charles, we've got Booker. I haven't seen you in ages either. How you doing? You all right? You're on mute. There we go. Putting you on the spot, Booker.
That's fine. I'm very well, Simon. How are you?
Yeah, doing well. Yeah, you're in an office today?
I am. Yes. We have a 5-day-a-week policy, so I've been back at the office since March.
Okay, right. That's interesting. Yeah, it might be interesting if we could chat about that separately. Actually, I'm interested in the topic of return to office is on a lot of people's minds at the moment, isn't it? So fabulous. So we've got a good group already. So and hey Charles, how you doing? All right. I see you're off mute.
Yeah, good, Simon. Good to see you.
So for those of you who, and I think probably most of you weren't on the call that we had last week, Charles shared his informal job title. Do you want to say it again? I thought it was brilliant.
So I'm a Chief Excitement Officer.
Chief Excitement Officer.
So I'm rather exuberant, but yeah, I'm actually Chief Growth Officer at Next Wave. But yeah, there we go.
Yeah, brilliant.
I'm glad you enjoyed the
I did very much. Yeah, it was excellent. So I am excited to have you guys in the room today, and we're going to talk about influence. So it's an important topic. I'm going to go through a bit of a presentation, share some ideas on the topic of influence in the context of people that are involved in projects, programs, transformation, product delivery, all of that stuff that we do in the kind of work that I've done, that you all are involved in, and it's sort of playing into that recognition that doing change at scale is really challenging, and it does involve people, and it does involve lots of moving parts, lots of variables, and so your ability to influence, I think, is actually at the heart of success in doing this kind of work. So that's what we're going to talk about. We'll close officially as usual at 12:30. So I'll make sure that we get some time for a bit of a Q&A discussion after a little presentation that I'm going to kick us off with. And I'll make sure that we have an official close of 12:30. If anyone wants to stick around and continue the conversation, then I'll be happy to do that. But I'll make sure that for anyone that needs to go at 12:30, we'll be done in terms of the content that I'm going to bring. So with that said, I'm going to kick off the presentation. While I'm getting the presentation up, let's just give you all a reminder. So I am recording the session. So if anyone's not happy with that, please do what you need to do, but I am going to record it and I'll make it available for people that would want to see the replay. As you'll see, you're probably getting a lot of messages from me and emails and all the rest of it, and I'm building a head of steam on this whole roundtable and this conversation. This is something that we're going to keep going, and there's a lot more to come. And I've had a lot of messages from people that said, oh, I can't make it today, but would like to come another time. So with that in mind, I am going to be offering the replay for people as well. So that's the reason for that. So hopefully you can see the presentation? Can someone just give me a nod? Are you seeing the green, big green page? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, I can see a nod. Thank you. So I will present for, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. I'll try and throw in some discussion points as we go through that as well. And then my aim will be for 20 past. I'll stop sharing the screen and let's have a bit more of a conversation. And hopefully what I'm going to talk about is going to resonate. It's going to strike some notes in your brains in terms of, yeah, I see that, I experienced that. So I want to start with this quote. So Daniel Goleman is the author who popularized emotional intelligence, and has done a lot of influential work, actually. One of the things that I pick up from him is on the topic of influence, and you can see what he writes here. Leadership really is about getting work done well through other people. And of course, what we do in the world of projects, programs, products, transformation, it is very much that. It's not down to one person, it's the collective. And so influence is the most powerful way to do that. By the same token, influence is crucial when you work with a division or a team where you don't, and this is what happens, doesn't it? When we're leading a transformation, if you're a sponsor or a senior stakeholder or a program manager or whatever that role that you have, you don't have direct authority. So you can't tell people what to do anymore because it doesn't work in the world. And also you just don't have that authority unless you're at the very top of the organization. And even then it doesn't work, right? So you need that skill of how to influence. So that's that sort of backdrop of the why. And so I've talked before, and I will continue talking about the aligned program executive. This is the snapshot of what that means. The backdrop is that what we do is complicated. It can bring all sorts of challenges. It can be stressful. It can be hard. But that's what we do. That's what we get paid for. And there's a bunch of steps that we can take and things that we can focus on in order to optimize. And so it's a 3-phase framework, and really at the heart of that, I put influence at the heart of all of that. So we're going to talk about some stuff here that's all about that. But just to point out, there's a whole sort of development pipeline that sits around that heart of being able to influence I'm going to be talking about. So here's a question, for me, the aligned program executive, what does that mean? It is someone who is clear about what they're doing and why. It is someone who is connected with people. It is someone who is focused, not allowing the stress and the overwhelm and the distractions to get in the way, but is able to bring focus to really make big things happen, and therefore is influential. Yeah. So look at that question. I'm interested. Actually, come off mute and give me your thoughts on that question. Can you think of someone? Have you experienced someone in your work and your career who is able to do this really, really well? Someone who's in a sort of senior exec sponsorship type position, or it could be a project or program manager, of course, as well. And I can see we've got more people coming in to the call, which is great. So welcome guys. So can you think of someone who does this? And the way that I phrase this is quite deliberate. It doesn't have to be a big fanfare, but someone who can solve problems by using influence. It could be done quietly, smoothly. You're sort of pulling the strings in the background, calling in favors, orchestrating that alignment across teams and managers, departments. And this comes to play most critically, most valuably when things are actually going off track. So who would have a thought of someone that they can think of that does that? And it could be yourself. I think actually I can think of one of you here that I would probably describe in this way already, but I won't give away the what I'm thinking. So who wants to come off mute and give a thought on this question? Putting you on the spot.
I'll go, Simon. rather than talk about myself, I think I'll talk about my team and what NextWave does, and some people on the call will know Tony Clark, Ian Ivey, and others. We're all about what we call the intelligent orchestration of people and technology. So this slide really resonates, super resonates, in terms of getting both our own team and our clients' team on that journey, because we can't achieve success without consensus. And the more gently, and the more that journey is carried forward through trust, is the best outcome. So how do we achieve advocacy in everyone we're dealing with, whether it's our fintech partners, whether it's our clients? How do we ensure that everybody understands what we're doing and wants to go on the journey? Change and transformation is not easy. There's often a lot of resistance. So if people understand it and it's contextualized from the beginning, it makes the whole process that much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an ecosystem. It's a whole chain that you're orchestrating, isn't it? So you sort of the spider in the web, pulling all of those threads together. Yeah. And so some thoughts here, if you look at the boxes, you know, what's happening when someone's able to do that. And I can think of some examples of people that I have worked with that do this really well. And it's about how do we use relationships, and, you know, there's an investment in relationships over time that can lead to a sense of reciprocity. One of the books I'm going to refer to is Robert Cialdini, who's built a whole career on one word, influence. He's got a bunch of books on this topic. And reciprocity is used in all sorts of contexts. It's that sort of deal making. I'll give you this in return for me being able to ask you for something in return. And then you've got asking for a favor, deal making, influence, trust, all those kind of things are coming into it. And yeah, you mentioned trust actually, Charles, as well. And the difference there is that it's influence rather than authority and rule books and governance and all those things, right? So what's going on there? Let's delve into that a bit more. I think that the impact of influence is really interesting, and I've been doing some reading and research and thinking about that. Here's one example, and there's so many, right? But there's a story at Nike of how they, and this is going back a few years, two executives wanted to bring about a change, a decision to stop using toxic materials in the shoes. And they had to figure out how to get people to buy into that as an idea. And, you know, the work that this group does, that you all do, involves making something happen, and everyone's got their own priorities. Everyone's got their own, you know, near-term things that they need to worry about. And they might not be the same as what you're trying to bring about, of course, right? So this is an example of that. So you've got a process where they thought about who's got influence in the organization. How do we approach that tipping point with the 25,000 people that work in the company globally? They went to the designers and they went to the people of influence that they could identify. And they had to figure out how to change the conversation from, we think we should do this because it's a bad thing that we're doing now, we need to be less bad. And they turned it around into actually appealing to the culture of a company, is we are innovators. So that's one example of how they used influence and the softer approach to actually achieve something and get people to buy into this big idea. So that's a shift, right? So that's just one example. I've also been thinking about authority, right? So there's a guy, there's an academic here, Richard Claydon, posted recently, which just resonated for me. I can think of lots of examples of this. I have a friend who's a CEO of a public company. He was CFO until recently, and has basically faced a lot of this kind of revolt, you know, a young workforce in retail, and a lack of, 20 years ago, you had authority because you were in a particular role or a position. That's not how the world works anymore. People want to express their opinion and their view. And so there's a really sort of big debate about authority, right? So it doesn't work the way it used to. And yet we still, when we do transformation efforts in enterprises, we're still appealing to authority-based tactics, right? So this is just some examples. I'm sure you guys have got lots more examples you can think of where, we're migrating to single platforms. So now you all need to change your processes, and we might not do a brilliant job of change management, but get on with it. So there's an authority-based tactic there of this needs to happen, get with the program kind of thing. And there's many others. There's changing ways of working is another example of that, where we're doing this now, and you have to vote with your feet. If you don't like it, you can leave, right? That does happen, and I'm sure you guys kind of see that as well and experience that perhaps. The strategy is to reduce cost and centralize work. So again, follow that strategy. Another one is we need to grow. So we're going to take this client, even though we're not operationally ready for it, we can't handle the volumes, the processes might break, but we're going to do this. We've promised that we're going to do it. I've seen lots of examples like that in the initiatives that I've been involved in. So, and I'm sure you can think of your own. And so what happens there with authority-based tactics, lots of words here, right? So disengagement, burnout, inertia. Inertia is a big one, actually. So it's not an explosive reaction that says things are broken, but things go a lot slower than they could have done. And then you've got, a plethora of failed projects, unintended consequences, cost overruns, and all the rest of it. So can I just ask you guys to mute if you're not speaking? By the way, I'm getting a little bit of feedback again. Thank you. And so that's the old model, right? Command and control and authority. So we need to be good at influence, full stop, right? So how do we do that? Well, of course, you need to become an influencer, right? You need to be famous. You need to be able to have a huge following and get people to buy into your ideas, and you be posting all day. So that's not what I'm saying at all. I would point out, however, the one on the right hand side I think is really interesting. So this lady Reshma Sojani, you might have heard of, might have come across. She's doing some very inspiring, very purposeful work, and this particular clip was her opportunity to speak at a conference with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. And what that was like, super inspiring little clip that's worth finding. If you haven't seen it, it's quite interesting. But it's not about being an influencer, it's about having influence. There's a grounded real world answer here in terms of what we can do in this world of transformation, projects, programs, products. There's lots and lots of stuff out. There's lots of ideas. And if you want to know more about these, I'm happy to talk more, but I'm not going to go into these, just to point you to a couple of great resources and some lists, right? There's lots of tactics and principles of how to do influence. And you can see here, if you look at the Mind Gym list here, some of these. Reasoning is about logic, rational arguments, business cases, return on investment, return on effort kind of conversations, right? We should do this because it's going to pay back in these ways. And then the bottom two in particular go to that concept of authority and forcing people to do something which, I'm arguing just doesn't work anymore. Cialdini had some really interesting stuff around reciprocity. It's the idea of, he gives a really interesting example. It might be maybe dated for some of you now, but if you've ever seen, this is going back a few years, I remember flying through airports in the US, and you would see the Hare Krishna followers would be giving people gifts. They'd give you a flower or a book, and what they're doing is asking for a donation, but it's the idea of, I've given you a gift, I've given you something, and then they ask for that donation. So there's a reciprocity. It's a really powerful psychological principle that Cialdini describes really well in the book, about how when you feel that you owe somebody something, so how could you use that is the thinking, right? That's the thing that I want to just evoke in you today, is in your transformation efforts, how could you do more nuanced and more sophisticated and varied ways of using influence, rather than just this is the strategy everyone needs to follow. What are you already doing as well is perhaps another way to think about that. And I'm going to close with this. There's just one tool here that I'm going to talk about for a couple of minutes. If we had more time, I would actually talk you and guide you through doing this. But this is based on a technique of emotional intelligence. I'm going to be talking a bit more about emotional intelligence in future rounds of this. And we would be talking about things like empathy and attunement, emotional tuning into the other person, all that. But if you boil down, we're trying to move mountains, trying to transform an organization. We want teams and divisions, departments to go along on that journey. It comes down to people, right? It comes down to one person at a time. So here's a technique that you can try, you can think about using. How do you actually listen to where that person is, tuning in, and then choose your tactics based on some of those ideas and principles that we were seeing in the previous page. So the technique is, when you're interacting with someone that you want to influence, actually pausing and slowing down your thinking and using those 3 questions. Where are you in that interaction? Let me just explain a little bit about that sentence. Are you in your head thinking about what you want? Are you in your persona? What does that mean? That means that you're acting the way you think you need to act. So if you're a leader, then it's your made up story of what a leader does and sounds like. Is that what you're doing in that interaction? Or are you in fact with the other person, really listening and tuning in, thinking about, okay, so what do they need? That's the second question. What does that person need right now? How do I know that? How can I find out? How can I ask good questions? Once I understand that, then it's about connecting. Then it's about thinking about how I can influence them towards my mission that I'm trying to achieve. And how can we then get into the deal making kind of conversations, but starting with a connection is the point there. So this is the kind of thing that's easy to say and actually quite hard to do. The third and final question is, what are you actually feeling? Are you feeling a bit angsty about that interaction? What's going on there? Are you feeling connected? And how can you do more of that in order to really have an influential conversation with the other person, right? So those are the big ideas, right? So if you want to know more about any of this, I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes now. Let's have a bit of a chat. I want to hear from what I've said in that short presentation struck a chord. What in particular, maybe we begin with, what do you already do that is influential? And what would you share with the group here about what you're already doing? Maybe we could begin with that as a simple question. So who would offer something about how you do this today?
Simon, can you hear me?
Yes. Hey Simon, all right.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. So the bit that I thought I'd like to share is I in my head, I think of this as kind of corridor conversation, consensus building before you put a big proposal or a transformation proposal, before you put it before the executive committee for approval. You do all of the political side of things, getting everybody's opinion, all of the stakeholders, their viewpoints, what their concerns are. Bit of kind of like a scene out of House of Cards. I don't enjoy it personally, I'll be honest with you, but I kind of always imagine I am in the House of Cards, and I need to make sure that everybody's happy, because there's been instances where something comes from the left field that you might have not considered, and one single objection could put your proposal dead in the water. So square everything off and just make sure everybody's happy and on board. And that to me sounds a bit of influence. I might not, the people might be more senior to me, they might have a slightly more influence, but just getting their buy-in and consensus to either not object to the proposal, even that would be Yeah, so I'd like to share that.
Absolutely. So it's warming up, right, and working at that individual level before you're in the committee or whatever. And I think we learn that sometimes the hard way when we don't do that.
Absolutely.
you get shot down and challenged, and you're not prepared for that, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, it's about, this conversation for me is about just being a little bit more sophisticated, a bit more intentional about how you're doing that, thinking about those tactics, principles, but really it's about the human to human connection is really what matters, right? So that's what I think. Yeah. Tony, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
You're doing it old school. Yeah, what the slide about authority resonated with me, because I think I just think it doesn't work anymore at all.
And the work you do really plays into that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've got to stop assuming that once we've got the executive on board, it's going to work. Now you need the executive on board because they can get in your way.
Yeah.
But basically, I find literally all you need executive senior leaders to do is not veto what you're doing. And preferably they nod. You know, if they nod and tweet about it, you're done. Like that's as much as you're going to get out of them. Literally, you just need their agreement, because the work is going to happen in the middle management layer. You know, so I like the real consensus where the real expertise is in the middle management layer. So I focus a fair bit on building the middle management consensus, because if there's a middle management cross-functional group, they all make the same recommendation to their senior leaders, then the senior leaders will all nod in unison.
Yeah. And there's another one, isn't there? Is how do you get that senior person to go along with it? They have people that they trust that are influencing them, of course. So
figuring out the senior leaders. So of course you engage with the senior leaders, but the first question is, who's your go-to person on this topic?
Yes.
Actually, who you work with. So that's what I'm finding is that's where the working groups and the actual collaboration happens. And if you can get that group where it's maybe one tone down in politics, you get that group just collaborating on content. It's my latest test because everything's on Teams now.
Yes.
So I literally have a collaboration maturity model emerging in my mind, which is, did you share the deck with me in its raw form on Teams so that I could review early, or did you email me a shiny polished PDF? And just those sorts of collaboration techniques on the ground is what I'm finding is more of a co-creation rather than a sell the dream. I did my PowerPoint and now I'm selling it to you. It's we got together and co-created from the beginning.
Yeah. So recently, this is something that I would never have dared to do before. But recently I've been playing with, if we were in a room together on a whiteboard, we would draw a picture. I had to articulate a really complex narrative on this is what's happening, this is what different stakeholders are saying, but we want to affect a change in culture. It was a big, grand idea. And instead of putting ideas into boxes in a PowerPoint, which was constraining my thinking, I just used OneNote and a digital pen and colors and stuff and rainbow pen and all sorts of stuff, and actually used that. I thought it was quite brave, but it worked really well. In a meeting, in a video meeting, I shared that instead of a PowerPoint. And you can pinch and zoom and move around the different ideas and stuff, but it's super scrappy, but it was really effective. And it's kind of what you're saying there as well, isn't it? That let's work together rather than I've got the answer and I'm giving it to you, right? Yeah,
exactly. I think specifically in the remote working, those lo-fi kind of tools tell people that this is not a polished idea. It's genuine that I'm asking you your opinion. It's not like I polish this and I'm asking your approval. It's genuine that I'm asking for your input, and that makes all the difference. Those subtleties, I think. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you agree. For me, it took quite a lot of courage to do that, and I was thinking, why did I never do this before? Because it's so obvious, but I wasn't comfortable because it's like, it's like wearing shorts and doing a Zoom call versus, putting a tie on, isn't it? So
yeah. I mean, because we're on Teams at work, Microsoft Teams, it's finally caught up with Google Docs, and you can even do that just in a PowerPoint. You can literally give edit permission to someone else, and they can concurrently go in. So even that shows that you're genuinely seeking feedback if you give them edit rights to your stuff, not just review rights.
Yeah. So there's something in there about influence, isn't there? Because you're co-creating, but you're giving a lot. You're giving a lot of listening. You're giving a lot of, there's a trade there of trust and you're really taking their ideas on board. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so what more, guys? What would you say to those ideas? That there's so much in this topic. I think I might do a bit more around this topic of influence, actually, because it's already like past, I'm realizing. But yeah, does anyone have something they want to share?
Yeah, Simon, I might chime in. Apologies, I don't think I've raised my hand, but
No worries. Yeah,
I think one aspect of
I think Guillaume will be next as well because he had his hand up. I just noticed. Yeah.
Sure. Apologies, Gabe. One aspect that I thought is quite interesting is influence from the point of view of how you influence a team. So I think what we've been discussing mainly is how you influence mainly your clients.
Yes.
But if you look at it from the perspective of influencing your team and those who work for you,
yes,
to help you deliver, it's quite interesting in that you could do so in many different ways. You could do so through giving a series of speeches, quoting from movies and what have you, to try and build up that consensus and that morale. But I tend to find that coupling that with a bit of action and demonstrating is similarly quite effective.
Yeah.
So you can apply that to your clients as well. So you want to be able to influence in such a way and demonstrating that you can you can deliver by performing sort of action and doing some groundwork ahead of time. Those sorts of little actions I found they play a huge part in influencing.
That's interesting where you go with it, actually, because I remember now that you used to at least be into Toastmasters, right? Which was all about the speaking end of it. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes.
Are you still involved in?
I haven't been in a while, but yeah, I definitely was involved in that.
Yeah,
and still follow it.
Yeah, so that goes to the beginning of what you're saying, doesn't it? It's in terms of the speaking side, and then it's the action. And I think we've spoken on these roundtables a little bit about trust a few times, and that's what you're doing, is actually demonstrating that you can trust me to follow through, to do what I say. So I think one of the things I'm going to be bringing is a model of it's the not a personality test thing that I'm going to explain more about, but it's basically saying that I can lead with ideas is one preference, and I do that. So it's what we call a game changer. If you've got that kind of preference, that kind of energy, then you lead with ideas. I think there's something in what you're saying about how I can lead with human connection because I'm a leader and I'm influencing my team, and we've got that relationship, but then I'm influencing through action as well, right? And there's lots of stuff in there about doing to be different rather than do I feel like being different today, then I'm going to be different intentionally, versus actually just do stuff and you become different.
Absolutely.
There's lots of nuance around that, right? Yeah, thank you. And then Gui, have we still got Gui?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Thank you. I thought that you haven't seen that. And I feel that I might be joining late, or maybe it's the second or the third conversation you guys are having. And I got the feeling that you know pretty much everybody here, but maybe not me.
Yeah, no, so this is like, I think, number 5 of the roundtable. I'm going to be doing this every week.
All right. Come
and go. So it's
that's nice. Okay. Thank you for having me, by the way. So it's just a brief thing. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible because I know that we are close to the closing time. So I would love to share a little bit of my experience specifically. So for those who doesn't know me, I basically started my career quite early as an intern in a bank in a wholesale division. So basically my foundation career-wise in the first 9 years was in wholesale banking, right? First as an associate, then later as a banker for front sales, right? And then I've made a movement to technology, right? So something probably close to what Charles was saying first. And the change in dealing with colleagues and people, you know, subordinated to you in your team, change you completely from the financial markets through the technology, because you literally need to build this trust, and you must be influenced in order to get the results done, right? Especially in a high scale up company, which are the ones that I have been passing in the past 8 years at least as well, right? And I had a challenge, which was like to build a very big team with middle management, then linking to something that Tony was saying as well, and trying to, you know, build that trust and create the necessary influence to different cities, you know, different multi-level teams. And then I was expat to Amsterdam, which by the way I'm currently living. And then I was transferred to the United States, to both north and south parts. So first in Chicago, I spent like roughly a year over there, and then I moved back to still with my team, with senior people in Chicago, to Houston, Texas, which is a different culture and a different approach of professionals and clients as well, right? So with all that said, something that I learned from a mentor that is still from the financial markets and worked pretty well with me, even before the books, even before like looking for coaching, right? Or something more, let's say, structured. It's showing vulnerability in the most practical way, right? So if you show to your team, or either in a one-on-one conversation individually, that you are as well as a professional vulnerable in some topics, and you put this on the table, not in a way to, let's say, for lack of a better word, being a baby crying, you know, or kind of sharing your pains, but on a very collaborative way, saying like, listen, that's what I know that can work and I'm good with. This is where I need your help in order to get this target over here. Do you think you can help me with that? Because I think I can help. Maybe I can help you with that and that. Then you start building this trust, and you start therefore being influenced. To me, the order this worked like in different manners, basically like in 3 different specific times in my career where I needed to hire or even like or even conquer a team that I was like inheriting in that specific region, was showing the vulnerability and checking all the time whether or not they were with me and how satisfied they were as a team with the performance that we had, with the leadership that I was developing, with the help I was providing, right? And being a hands-on person as well. So that's a little bit of like my debrief from what you were describing so well during the beginning, Simon.
Yeah, love it. No, it's absolutely pertinent, right? Because it's, I think my intention here is just to encourage us to move from the external forcing things to happen to actually the connection. And that's all about emotional intelligence, and vulnerability is a big part of that. And I think you can take it to those tactics and principles, because there is in fact a give and take happening in that vulnerability. There is an opportunity, there's a permission, right? There's a permission to open up in a slightly different way when somebody does that. So yeah, fantastic. So what more? Are there more comments, guys, from anybody? What was useful? What was useful? Or what would be one thing that you might want to do now that you've had this conversation today? Is there something that you're going to do differently?
I just quickly raised my hand. That topic really hit home that the last gentleman was covering. The reason for myself is when you, especially with people who are technically subordinate to you, who you have a sphere of influence over, and you're trying to get buy-in, and you don't want to use your authority to get their buy-in, it's genuinely kind of understanding what their point of view and their interests are, where are they kind of coming from, and for you to get beyond the initial layer and to be able to peel that back, you have to get down, I wouldn't say to their level, but you need to spend the time and effort in understanding what they want to get out of this relationship, this engagement, and how can the engagement serve that, serve that for them, okay, you can make it serve for them. And that could be at various levels. It could be with your peers at executive level, or it could be with the developers, the testers who are part of your team to try and deliver that engagement. So the whole servant leadership kind of comes into question, because in essence, you're not using any hard influencing tactics. You're really using soft skills to keep their or get their buy-in and keep it for the period of transition and transformation that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. So it kind of inspires me what you guys have just spoken about in those last two bits. So I'm constantly thinking about, right, where shall I go next on this journey, right? So we've got the 9 modules within the Aligned Program Exec journey that I showed you the picture of, and there's topics, there's so many interesting conversations to have. But what you're really talking about here, my ability to lead in this way, to be vulnerable, or to really connect and build that rapport with somebody and to influence in this way, rests upon how well I know myself, actually, and therefore what I would be calling self-awareness, and my ability to really understand that, such that I have clarity, such that I can show up in a way that is confident, clear, compelling, courageous, all those kind of things, right? So I think that's my inspiration that I'm taking from you guys today, is that will be the next thing that I'm going to bring, I think, is going to be around the topic of self-awareness, and it's a rich topic as well. So fantastic. We are a little bit over time. Like I said, you know, if anybody needs to go at past, you should have felt free to do that. Some people have, but I'm glad that there was a good sparking of some comments there as well. So fantastic. Have a wonderful Wednesday, and let's talk again. Let's talk again soon.
Thanks, Simon.
Okay.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.